My boss fired me the night before a global product launch. "We'll manage without you," he said. I packed my things, said nothing, and removed my encryption key from the code. The panic that exploded on launch day. He thought firing me would solve everything. The next day, investors were panicking, the launch screen was pitch black, and only I knew why. My name is Andre, and on May 2nd I learned exactly how ruthless people can be when power clouds their judgment. It was a Wednesday night, 10:43 p.m., when my boss, Beck Hoya, called me into his office. On the eve of our global product launch, I had been leading the development of Nexera, a platform projected to generate over €50 million in the first quarter alone. I lived and breathed that project for 14 months, sacrificing weekends, birthdays, and every last bit of peace I had left. Beck Hoya sat behind his mahogany desk, legs crossed, a glass of wine in hand, like we were discussing a restaurant menu. "Andre," he said softly, "we've decided to go in a different direction." Beside him, Victoria, the operations manager, watched everything in silence. At first, I thought I had misheard. A different direction? "The launch is tomorrow." Victoria smiled. The kind of smile you see on someone's face right before they stab you in the back. "We'll manage without you. Pack your things." I felt the air escape my lungs. I looked at the whiteboard behind them, the one I had filled with every critical detail for the next day's launch. "You're firing me the night before the launch?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Victoria shrugged. "We're very grateful for your work, but we need someone who aligns better with our vision." "Nothing personal." I stared at her for a moment, noticing the designer clothes, the expensive ring sparkling on her finger, and the board's approval echoing behind every word. And in that moment, I understood exactly what this was. It wasn't personal. Of course it was. It always is when someone in power feels threatened by someone who actually knows what they're doing. I nodded slowly. "Understood." Beck Hoya leaned back, satisfied. "I knew you'd handle this professionally." I gave a slight smile. "Always." I packed my things in silence, my laptop, my notes, and one more thing, the encryption key linked directly to the heart of Nexera's back-end code. The key I created. The key only I had access to. I said nothing. I didn't slam doors. I didn't even look back. But as I walked out of the building that night, a strange calm settled over me. Because while Beck Hoya believed he had erased me from the project, he had no idea that I wasn't leaving empty-handed. And certainly wasn't leaving powerless. Let me go back a few months. When Beck Hoya first pitched the idea of Nexera to the board, he had no clear plan, no functional prototype, and zero experience with SaaS platforms. But he did have ambition and the right connections. I was hired at the time by Daniel Scott because I had successfully led 2 previous launches at my former company. Victoria wanted me to build everything behind the scenes while she took public credit. I accepted, not because I was naive, but because I believed in the product. At first, it didn't bother me. I let him parade around as if he had designed the entire platform. I ignored the comments, the board meetings where my name wasn't even mentioned. Why? Because I thought the work would speak for itself. I was wrong. The first cracks appeared 3 months ago. A small bug was found in the payment module. Victoria insisted the interns fix it instead of me. They failed twice. I stepped in. Fixed it in under an hour. And at the next meeting, Beck Hoya publicly thanked the interns. I let it slide. Then came the budget cuts. He cut my QA team in half without consulting me, claiming we didn't need that many testers. I stayed late for an entire week covering the gaps alone. That's when I realized how far he was willing to go to pave his own path. But I stayed. I kept working because I wasn't going to abandon something I had built with my own hands. Until Wednesday night. That night wasn't just betrayal. It was a declaration of war. And Victoria had no idea what she had started. Because while she saw me as disposable, she forgot a simple truth. You can't launch a product built on integrity by stabbing the person holding the foundation together. And tomorrow was launch day. she was about to learn that the hard way. A synchronized global deploy across 3 continents. Months of work, millions spent on marketing, investors flying in from New York, Singapore, and Berlin. Everything was ready, except now I wasn't part of it. I sat at my kitchen counter, drinking coffee, staring at the bright numbers on the microwave. I considered stepping back, disconnecting, letting everything unfold without me. But curiosity has a way of creeping in when you know a disaster is about to unfold. At 8:45 a.m., I opened my laptop. Nexera's launch page was already live. The countdown was ticking through its final seconds. Bichoya's pre-recorded speech was scheduled to go live at exactly 9 a.m. across multiple platforms. A polished, carefully rehearsed speech about innovation, leadership, and bold new frontiers. I took a deep breath, because here was the crucial point no one outside the development team understood. Nexera's backend had been built with a layered encryption sequence, a sequence I had created myself after months of client security audits and compliance demands. The encryption system wasn't just a safeguard. It was the literal ignition key for the entire platform. Without the correct decryption token, the one stored in my secure drive, the platform wouldn't just malfunction, it simply wouldn't start. And I had designed it that way because I knew that launching Nexera half-baked could expose the company to lawsuits or even complete collapse. I never imagined that safeguard would be needed for this reason. At exactly 9 a.m., I clicked on the live investor broadcast. The camera showed Victoria on stage, microphone in hand, with the massive screen behind her still completely black. She whispered something to the lead engineer, the same one who had been promoted above me 2 weeks earlier. At 9:01, investors were already standing up from their seats. The public chat exploded. Is this a joke? A €50 million launch and they can't even start the presentation? I leaned back in my chair and let the scene play out. This wasn't petty revenge. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I simply hadn't handed over keys that didn't belong to them. I was no longer on the payroll. They fired me. They removed me from all systems. But they forgot the most important thing: you can't fire the architect and expect the house to stand on its own. By 9:25, Beck Hoya finally addressed the audience. We're experiencing some minor technical issues. The launch will be rescheduled. His voice cracked on that last word. Shortly after, Daniel, the former director, called me. Andre, I just heard what happened. I'm sorry. I should have warned you about Beck Hoya earlier. By 10 o'clock, my inbox was flooded with emails from engineers, clients, even investors. But one message stood out, from Beck Hoya. Subject, call me. I stared at it for a long moment. I didn't feel satisfaction or triumph. It was something colder, realization. They never valued the work, only the control. And when they lost control, there it was, a short, dry message. No apologies. No explanations. The kind of message someone sends when they still believe they're holding all the cards. At 10:15, my phone buzzed again. It was Mia, a co-worker. Please, Andre. I know it's not my place, but the whole team is panicking. Clients are threatening to break contracts. And I knew exactly what was happening in that closed-door conference room. Beck Hoya was pointing fingers at me, at the team, at anyone who couldn't defend themselves. I'd seen it all before. And I wasn't about to walk back into a burning building I didn't set on fire. But this wasn't just about me anymore. Mia, the development team, even Daniel, they didn't deserve to be scorched by Victoria's ego. At 10:30, another email, this time from the legal director. Subject, contact us directly as soon as possible. I gave a bitter smile. Now they understood the severity. At 10:45, the final call came. Her voice was shaking. The decryption key. The system is dead. Investors are furious. We need access immediately. I leaned against the kitchen counter. You fired me last night. Andre, don't play games with me, she snapped, her voice trembling. The company's reputation is at stake. And there it was. No, I'm sorry. No, we made a mistake. Just concern for the reputation. Just the company. I already knew the truth. To them, I had never been part of it. You know you didn't mean what you said, she added, her voice turning soft, rehearsed, fake. This is business. You're a professional. Any proprietary tool you created, including the security protocols, falls under the contract clauses. You'll have to renegotiate if you want access. I could practically hear her jaw clench on the other end. You're blackmailing me. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. I'm just explaining reality. You fired the architect. You don't get to keep the keys for free. A long, sharp silence followed. Then she whispered. What do you want? I let the question hang in the air. Because truthfully, I wasn't sure yet. But I did know one thing, I wasn't stepping back into that chaos on her terms. I'll let you know, I said. And hung up. At 11 a.m., Daniel called. Unlike Victoria, his first words were, Andre, I'm sorry. I closed my eyes for a second. He sounded sincere. Why did they ask you to get involved? I asked, suspicious. The board, he replied. Victoria's story isn't holding up. The investors are threatening to sue. The directors want to hear from you directly. It felt as much like a trap as a turning point. I still didn't know which one. But either way, I wasn't walking into that room empty-handed. At exactly 2 p.m., I stepped into the boardroom, a place I had never been invited to before. 12 people sat around a polished walnut table. Directors, investors, legal advisors. I recognized most of them from quick glances in hallways or names on emails I was never copied on. Almost no one looked up when I walked in. Victoria sat at the end of the table, immaculate in a tailored navy suit, her face perfectly composed. She didn't look at me. Daniel, seated along the side, gave me a subtle nod. His eyes said, "Stay sharp." The chairman, Leonard Marks, gestured to the empty chair across from Victoria. "Andre, please join us." I sat with steady hands, even though my heart was pounding. Leonard laced his fingers and began. "We've asked you here because we believe you have relevant information regarding this morning's events." I kept my expression calm. "I do." Victoria cut in, her voice smooth like crystal. "I believe we all understand what happened." Andre misinterpreted the terms of his departure. It was an unfortunate timing issue. Unfortunately, there was a failure in the transition protocol. I leaned forward slightly. There was no misunderstanding. Bekoya terminated my contract less than 12 hours before a global launch and revoked my access. He also failed to secure the encryption key essential to the platform's operation. A wave of murmurs rolled across the table. Leonard raised a hand. "Let him speak." I took a deep breath. This isn't about hurt feelings or petty sabotage. I built Nexera's decryption framework under strict security protocols. That key was bound to my contract, which is standard practice in high-level development. What made this personal was Victoria deciding that leadership meant removing anyone who didn't fit her agenda. She gambled a €50 million launch assuming I'd crawl back or fix everything after being fired. Leonard's face remained neutral, but several board members exchanged looks. One of them, Marion, someone I recognized from investor calls, spoke up. "Is that true, Victoria?" Victoria forced a tight smile. There were tensions. Andre was difficult to work with. He lacked flexibility and leadership structure. I almost laughed. Then the legal director spoke. "Documentation." I met his gaze. "Yes. I have records. Emails. Project logs. Change requests." He nodded. "I've seen the records. They're authentic." A new tension filled the room, not explosive, but sharp. Leonard slowly leaned back in his chair. "Victoria, did you authorize Andre's removal without ensuring an adequate transition protocol?" Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. His voice remained calm, but cutting. Answer the question. Bichoya's mask cracked just slightly. I thought the team could handle it. Another ripple of murmurs. Leonard folded his hands again. And now we're facing a failed launch. Investor backlash. Imminent legal exposure. Because of a belief. Victoria lowered her gaze. Her shoulders tensed. Then Leonard turned to me. Andre. The question now is, who do we trust moving forward? I chose my words carefully. Full reinstatement. Complete authority over my team. Direct reporting to this board, not to Victoria. And a formal statement clearing me of any wrongdoing. Leonard exchanged a look with Marion. She nodded once. Victoria's head snapped up. You cannot be serious. Leonard responded with icy calm. We are. Then he turned back to me. You'll have a contract in your inbox by the end of the day. I nodded. It wasn't just a turning point. It was the moment everything changed. At 6 p.m., the contract arrived. Short. Clear. With no involvement or oversight from Victoria. The final clause felt like a silent admission. No individual shall interfere in any decisions made by Andre Green regarding the operation and recovery of Nexera. I read it 3 times. A week ago, it would have made me feel triumphant. Now, it sounded merely transactional. Because a title didn't erase the fact that the same people who enabled Bichoya's unchecked behavior were only stepping in now because the damage finally hit their wallets. At 6:30 p.m., Daniel called. I heard what happened, he said, his voice careful. You're back, for now, I replied. He hesitated. Andre, I know how this looks, but this is an opportunity. I looked out the window of my apartment toward the city skyline. Is it? Or is it just another way for you all to clean up the mess so you can pretend none of this ever happened? Daniel sighed. Maybe this wasn't about settling scores. It was about setting a standard. I wasn't there to save their launch. I was there to make sure people like Victoria never had the chance to do this to anyone again. At 7 p.m., I returned to the office for the first time since the night I was fired. The floor was almost empty, just a small team trying to contain the damage. Mia was there, typing furiously at her desk. She looked up when she saw me. Andre, you're back? I nodded slightly. We've got work to do. She nearly knocked over her chair as she stood. Thank God. You have no idea what it's been like. I know, I said softly. And it ends now. We gathered the remaining team. No speeches, no grand declarations. Just clear instructions. We reviewed server logs, checked security layers, recalibrated the encryption sequences. I restored the master key the correct way, this time with oversight. At 9:30 p.m., Mia looked up from her screen. All systems are green. I nodded. Good. Let the diagnostics run overnight. We launch tomorrow, on our terms. She hesitated. Andre, what if they try to pull this again? I met her eyes. They won't. Because there's one truth they never expected: the moment you stop playing defense, everything changes. And I wasn't on the defensive anymore. At 10 p.m., I walked past Victoria's office. The door was slightly open. She sat at her desk, staring at her screen. For a moment I considered going in, rubbing it in, telling her what it felt like to have power ripped away. But I didn't. Because real power isn't proving a point. It's making sure that point never needs to be proved again. I kept walking. By midnight, the system had passed every test. Secure. Not because I had fixed their problem, but because I had finally understood something I should have known from the beginning. When you build something with integrity, you owe no loyalty to people who treat you as disposable. You owe loyalty to yourself and to the people who believed in you when it mattered. And the next day, I wasn't coming back to clean up their mess. I was coming back to change everything. At 8:55 a.m., I was in the control room, watching the monitors flicker as Nexera prepared to go live. The energy was different. No frantic running, no whispers of blame. Just focused silence, the kind that comes when people know exactly what's expected of them and trust the leadership they have. All systems nominal. 30 seconds, Mia said from her station. I nodded. Let's do it. Exactly at 9 a.m., Nexera launched. This time, everything worked. The homepage loaded flawlessly in every region. User sessions began without a single hitch. The silence in the room broke with a soft round of applause. I didn't clap. I just watched, letting it all sink in. At 9:15, Leonard called. Andre. His voice was calm. Good work. Thank you, I replied, keeping my tone professional. He hesitated. We'll need to discuss your next steps. The board is impressed. A faint smile crossed my lips. I already knew exactly what I was going to say when that conversation came. At 9:30, I walked into the boardroom, this time, by invitation. Victoria was already there, sitting at the end of the table. Her face looked tighter, paler. Like a CEO clinging to a title that no longer meant anything. Leonard stood as I entered. Andre, please. This time, I sat at the center of the table. Daniel to my left. Mia, invited as head of development, to my right. Leonard cleared his throat. As everyone knows, Nexera's launch this morning was a success. Thanks to Andre and his team. He didn't say despite Victoria. He didn't have to. Then he turned to her. Restructuring. You will step down from operational oversight effective immediately. Your role will be moved to strategic partnerships, with no direct authority over Andre or his division. Victoria opened her mouth, but Marion cut in. We've also decided that Andre will lead product operations permanently, reporting directly to the board. Silence fell across the room. Victoria turned to me in disbelief. But Leonard looked at her and, with a slow nod, finished. You're dismissed, Victoria. She left without saying a word. And just like that, the storm passed. But the real decision would only come after that meeting. At noon, Leonard approached me in the hallway. Andre, the board wants to discuss a long-term leadership role. Vice President level. You've earned it. I looked at him carefully. I'll consider it. He smiled. You've changed the way we see things. The way this was handled won't happen again. I nodded. I'll keep you informed. Because I wasn't there for a title. I wasn't there to play the political game. I was there to make sure no one else on my team or in this company would ever be pushed aside the way I was. At 4 p.m., I sent a message to the entire company. Leadership isn't about control, it's about responsibility. Starting today, every decision in product operations will be transparent and earned. My door is open. Simple. Clear. Exactly the kind of message I had always wanted to hear and never did. At 5 p.m., Mia knocked on the door of my new office. She smiled. I think you just made a lot of people believe in this place again. I nodded. Good. That's the point. Because here's the truth I learned from all of this. Power isn't in titles, contracts, or boardrooms. It's in knowing who you are, standing your ground, and making sure the people who come after you don't have to fight the same battles you did. Victoria thought firing me would end my career. She was wrong. It ended hers and gave me the chance to build something lasting, on my own terms, with integrity. And that's something no one could take away from me.
Reddit Relics comment. This story shows exactly how true strength doesn't come from titles, but from character and integrity. Andre was tossed aside as if he were irrelevant, but he proved he was the foundation of everything. He not only rebuilt the company on his own terms, but also redefined what leadership truly means. Victoria fell because of her own arrogance. Andre stood firm and turned an injustice into a legacy.